This lesson, we're going to be adding in more event listeners, and these are going to be the KeyPress event listeners. So whenever the player presses a key on their keyboard, it's going to invoke these KeyPress functions. So setting up our document, adding an event listener just as we would any other event listener, and the event listener that we're listening for is key down. So anytime somebody presses on the keyboard and presses down on the keyboard, where they're located, the focus is located within the document, which is everywhere, the whole page, then we are going to be invoking our function. We'll call it press on, and then we're going to also do another one for press off. So we're going to be able to detect once the player presses the key and then once they let go of the key, and using key up method in order to accomplish that. Our press on function, and we need to listen for the event object. So we're passing that in as a variable e, and we can also prevent the default action by using the JavaScript method prevent default. And I'm going to console log out the value of event key. And within this event object, we're passing quite a bit of information, and we're going to be making use of determining what key was pressed whenever the key was off. And as well, we're going to take the key that was last pressed and we're going to output that into key off. And I'm going to comma separate this out so that we can distinguish between the two functions. So let's try that out. So refresh. And now whenever I press the key, I can see that I've got key on and key off. And what we want to do for this is we want to toggle a function that determines which way and which key is actually being pressed, so that we can take some type of action depending on what key is pressed. And we also want to have the ability to press multiple keys at the same time and check to see what those keys are and how they're being invoked. So in case we have multiple keys, I'll clear this out, and this time I'm going to press the up and the down at the same time. And you see when I lift off of one and then I lift off of the other, we get that off function invoking. And that's how we can detect whether the player is pressing one key, two keys, and depending on how many keys they've got pressed, we can take the action accordingly. Set up an object to track which keys are being pressed, and we're going to use the same values that we've got for the key names that we're seeing here being indicated within the console. So setting up an object, and we're just going to check to see if the key has a Boolean value, so whether it's pressed on or off, and then we're going to take actions accordingly. So using arrow up, let's set that. So by default, we're going to set them all to be false. And this way, we can handle multiple key presses at the same time. There's also arrow right, so default for that, of course, false. And then the last one that we're going to be tracking, and if you want to track additional key presses, you can do that as well within this type of format. So you could track as many keys as you wanted to within this keys object. So the last thing that we want to do is, instead of tracking that the keys have been up and down, we're going to simply take that key value from the event key and add within that key object, setting the e key, so corresponding to the string value of e key that we saw output within the console. We'll set that value to be false. And we need to do the same thing for on click. So we set it to be true in this case. And you're going to see that now we're toggling between the Boolean values, and we know exactly which keys are being pressed. So while I'm pressing the up arrow, I see that we've got up arrow true. If I'm pressing left arrow, we see left arrow is true. If I push another key, so now I'm pushing the left and the right arrows. So arrow right is true, arrow left is true. And we've got full control, so we can have as many keys pressed as needed within our application, and we can track all of the key presses. So go ahead and add this into your application, add in the ability to track what keys are being pressed, and also set up an object, you can call it keys as well, that tracks which keys are being pressed. And coming up next, I'm going to show you how to introduce gameplay, and we'll create an object that will move around depending on what keys are pressed.